Candy, thank you so much for that great introduction. How happy I am to be here. I have notes, but if I'm doing my job right, I won't look at them one moment. I want to say how filled with gratitude I am to Joy and to Heather for making it possible for me to be here. These ladies are wonderful. I know a lot of you, most of you know them, and they're just fantastic. And to be seated between Lisa and Max, I'm greatly honored. And that was a wonderful talk, Max. Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay in the back there? Good, good. In about 100 days, I will hit, if I live the next 100 days, and the smart money's on that I will be 75 years of age. And thank you. And I wanted that applause because I'll tell you right now, Council on Aging, any of that stuff, talking about aging, I never thought I'd be 75. I really didn't. When I was a kid, you know, we grew up with that kind of duck and cover mindset about nuclear weapons or what have you. We were taught to get under our desk if there was a blast and stuff like that. People that I knew had fallout shelters, so I thought, I didn't think I was going to live to be old. And then in later years, in the early 70s, I was there for the 71 earthquake in Los Angeles, and I literally thought LA was going to fall into the sea. For those of you who have any sort of education in plate tectonics or geology, you know that's not possible that LA is going to fall in the sea, but I didn't understand such scientific matters at the time. I thought LA was literally, it was such a strong earthquake, I was so freaked out, I thought earthquakes I wouldn't live to be old. And then I had what turned out to be a very real concern about having a shortened life. Starting in the late 60s and throughout the entire 70s, I became addicted to drugs and alcohol. So I then really didn't expect to live old because of that, and neither did my friends. In this case, I was probably going to be right had I not gotten some help. But I don't want to talk about that much today. I might talk about a little bit. I want to talk about the most important thing for me now, and it has been for quite a while, and that is being present, and being present with you all here right now, really looking at you and listening to you and being with you, because I was not very good at that for my whole young life. Anybody here ever read any Alan Watts, a writer by the name of Alan Watts? Oh, very good. There's much I could say about the writer Alan Watts, but he kind of got through to me, as he did a good many people, with a book he wrote in the 70s called This Is It. And I'll tell you what the essence of that book is. It is just that. This is it. This moment coming right now. Here it is, this one. This is really all there is that's important. This moment right now with you, Max, and you, Lisa, and with Joy, and with Heather, and all of us here together. Me at this microphone, you in those seats at those tables. Again, we all have to plan for the future. We must remember the past. I'm not saying you don't do that, but many of us, and I was one of them, spent way too much time living in the future and dwelling on bad things that happened in the past. And that's no way to live. You can then miss the whole event if you're not totally present. And I finally learned to do that through this guy, Alan Watts, who planted a seed that I finally put into practice years later when I got well from drugs and alcohol. But I ran around. It's amazing the way I lived my life. I was an actor. I wanted to be an actor. And so I would audition for part and sometimes get the part, then find out when they paid, get the check, cash the check, and get another job. And I never really appreciated any of the moments as I was doing them. It's the same way I worked with wood. If there's any woodworkers out there, you know the process. You get some rough wood. I would buy it at Bonhoeff Lumber in LA, plane the wood, sand the wood, dowel the wood, glue the wood, finish the wood, buy some more wood. And then I finally, through this book and finally putting those things into practice, I finally got to actually enjoy the process of putting the wood through the planer, the feel of it. The feel of the 80 grit sandpaper at first, and then the 100 grit, the 150 and the 200 and the 400, and to make it nice and smooth. And I started to enjoy things as they were happening. I started to actually enjoy acting, to be present in the moment, and enjoy my work as an actor. That was a big breakthrough. And it was amazing to me, too, that I grew up the son of Ed Bagley. Anybody Anybody my age or roughly my age that remembers an actor named Ed Bagley, thank you for that. A wonderful actor. If there's an Ed Bagley Jr., of course there's an Ed Bagley Sr., and he was just known as Ed Bagley because I had no career at all at that time. And I had no idea that I'd won the lottery being born his son. I hadn't a lick of gratitude. And I was the son of this wonderful actor, but it was more than that. He was a great dad. He was a great person. He was the son of Irish immigrants. He had lived through the Great Depression. We saved string. We saved tin foil. We saved everything. We didn't waste. Turn off the lights. Turn off the water. Very, very careful. And I was raised that way. So when the first Earth Day happened in 1970, I was poised and ready to do things. And besides being so careful with things and saving water and saving electricity and all that, my dad was very well versed in the idea of being positive and do something to make a difference. I would complain about the smog with good reason. Growing up in LA in the 50s and 60s, we had horrible choking smog. It seared your lungs. You couldn't see the mountains in any direction. You're in a valley, but you couldn't see any of the mountains. Horrible. It hurt your lungs to just sit there. Forget about running and playing as a kid. It hurt. And I would complain about the smog, and he said to me, Eddie, I know what you're against. You're against the smog. I'm against the smog too. But what are you doing about it? If you're going to say no to smog, what do you say yes to? Start taking public transportation more, ride your bike, maybe one day buy yourself an electric car, but do something positive. Don't just curse the darkness, light a candle, do something. My father died within a few days of that first Earth Day, so that's just what I did. Rather than complain about the smog anymore, I wanted to do something to honor him. People wonder why I got involved. It was really because of this wonderful man who was my father. And I started recycling, I started composting, I started taking public transportation more, riding my bike, became a vegetarian. All those things I just mentioned, that list is an interesting common denominator there. They were all very inexpensive. I didn't need to be rich to do them. I was a broken, struggling actor. My meal ticket, my wonderful father had just passed away, so I didn't have money. What I wanted was fancy solar panels and a fancy electric car. I couldn't afford that. But what can you afford today? What can you do? What do you say no to? Interesting, but what do you say yes to? And I started doing that, and I saved money doing all that stuff. I took that money, invested in some, kind of medium ticket items. Eventually, many years later, I had solar and a fancy electric car. But it's about doing what you can, not things that you say no to. That's interesting. Well, I can't do this and I can't do that, but what can you do? Today, people want to change the environment. Buy yourself an energy-efficient light bulb, buy yourself an energy-saving thermostat, do something that you can do to save some money and protect the environment. But I just didn't have gratitude back then. My father was such a gift to me, and I also had no gratitude about his wonderful work as an actor. He was this great actor, and one day somebody asked me, and he was in the car, who's your favorite actor? I went, Rock Hudson, or whatever I said. I don't know who I said. And so he just sat there. He didn't say a word, of course. He was a fine actor. He was in a movie called 12 Angry Men. If there's young people out there that want to see a bunch of great actors, how about a hand for 12 Angry Men? See a bunch of actors in a movie together that work very well, wonderful character actors, and that was him. So I went from the earliest age, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? People would ask me. I said, well, I want to be an actor. I want to be a comedian. And the reason I said that was because of my father. I'm convinced to this day, if he had been a plumber, I'd be fitting pipe right now. That's what I'd be doing. I just wanted to do what he did. But he made it look so easy. I went, well, I'm charming. I can do that. Get me a series, Dad. Thank God I never said that. I can't imagine what he would have said or done. But I just wondered why I never picked up the phone and got me a job on Wagon Train or Gunsmoke. Like he could do that. Like A, he had the power to do that, he did not. Or B, that I would appreciate if he just handed it to me. So I went on a lot of interviews and tried out for things, and I never got any work. Why? I hadn't any training. I didn't take a minute to train or think about training. Imagine the son of a plumber going, Dad, you stay home today. I'll take the truck and I'll put those pipes together. What do you do? You kind of heat the copper pipe up before you? I'll figure it out. It doesn't work like that. You have to train. I finally took some training and began to work. And the amount of work that I've done since 1967 when I finally got in the union, no small coincidence, of course, I started to take classes as an actor. The next year, 1967, after I took these classes in 66, I began to work as an actor. And I continued to improve and, learn. Thank God I didn't get fired because I kind of learned on the set. learned on the set of this show called Room 222. Anybody old enough to remember that? Thank you. That was a fine show. The pilot was created by a man by the names of James L. Brooks, who you've heard of. Jim Brooks, who did Taxi, did wonderful As Good as It Gets movies and lots of great stuff. Great writer, great creator, great director. And I got to work with people like that, which is amazing that I got these jobs. I won the lottery and had no idea. I just got lucky by being his son and learned on the job and didn't get fired. But fortunately, there were people there to help me along the way. Since as an actor, I was kind of learning it as I was doing, I finally decided to take acting classes again. And there's this wonderful actor named Bruno Kirby, a great actor who's in Godfather 2, and he started taking classes again when he was in his 20s, as I was, starting to work a bit and be in some movies that were, kind of substantial movies. And I started taking classes again and started to improve again and again. And one day this guy said to me, he said, "You know what I think is interesting to watch, Ed?" This guy, Roy London was his name. I said, "What's that, Roy?" He said, "How a character deals with pain." I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh, look at the time, I gotta go. A great session today." I got out to my car, I thought, what an idiot, how a character deals with pain. Who wants to watch that? Oh, I'm in pain and I'm suffering and oh, everything's terrible. And I got another block driving my car and I realized that wasn't what he said at all. How a character deals with pain is what's interesting to watch. How Meryl Streep as Sophie in Sophie's Choice keeps the lid on that pot for nearly the whole movie till the end. What is wrong? What happened to this poor woman? What's going on with her? How a character deals with pain. In dramas, Bob De Niro in Mean Streets or Raging Bull, any of these things, this guy in this kind of pain and causing this kind of pain, what is that struggle about? And that's what's interesting to watch. Comedy, the same thing, it applies to comedy or drama. Laurel and Hardy are carrying a piano down a flight of stairs and they fall and the piano falls on them. Harold Lloyd is hanging from a clock. Imagine how painful that is when we're laughing because there's nothing at stake, no consequences, nobody's really getting hurt. And it's just universal. And the fact that I get to still do that work at 74, to still be working, is extraordinary to me. I never thought that I would work for 57 years in a business that I love. And my God, thank you for that. And still working, thank God. It's not just toxicity that I've been battling out in the environment there, the toxicity of air pollution, water pollution. It's toxicity in the mind and the soul, things where those events that happen that you can't seem to control and really eat your soul alive. It's something that people battle with every day, and thank God I got help with sobriety, and that gave me a little bit of heads up to deal with that, because you often wonder how these people got in these situations where they're drinking a quart of vodka every day, taking pills and doing that sort of thing. I did it because of the pain that I experienced as a young man, and I had no idea that there was a way around that you could get together with another group of people, and in unity with numbers of people. There's a saying, "I can't, but we can." And with groups of people, you can gather and make a change and have a better life. So I was able to do that. And I was able to even write a book about it. I wrote a book called To the Temple of Tranquility and Step on It. And the title of that book is really about my life, trying to find serenity in a bottle of vodka, trying to find serenity, in all the madness of an acting career. And I finally found it just by slowing down and experiencing this moment. Here it comes, this one, where I have everything that I need. I've never had, nor will any of us ever have everything that we want, but I think we all have what we need. Most of us in this room, I assume we do. And having achieved that, then you get to help other people the way you wonderful people are helping out those folks that need a meal, that need medical care, that need those things. The fact that you're stepping up and helping those people is extraordinary. Give yourselves a big hand for that. I said that I wrote a book, and I did. With your permission now, I'm going to read the first chapter of the book so you get a little taste of it. It really lays out pretty well some of the things I've been talking about. Hopefully you'll find it amusing too. Chapter 1, Permit Me. Sitting alone in the back of my father's car was nothing new for me. Leaving your kids inside a sweltering vehicle was not frowned upon in the mid-'60s. It was regarded as more of an impromptu spa day. And thrifty man that my dad was, he was not about to leave the motor running even on a hot day in August. Okay, I had a tendency to embellish back then. It was not August, but March. March 16th to be exact, my half birthday. Not quite sweet 16, but more than a quinceañera. Those two events are important ones. I'm aware that a 15-and-a-half-year birthday is not. And to celebrate such a non-event leaves you open to much derision, as did complaining about a hot car when it's technically still winter in LA, as did complaining about a hot planet a few years hence. But let me return to 1965. If you live in the Golden State, you reach 15-and-a-half years of age, you're allowed to apply for a learner's permit with the Department of Motor Vehicles. Then if you haven't killed anyone in those next 6 months, and you yourself live to be 16, you're granted a full and proper license to operate a vehicle in the streets of Los Angeles, or in my case, Van Nuys. It's important to note that despite my father's profession and his success, we did not live in Beverly Hills, where my father's car was now parked. We lived in the Valley, in a surprisingly modest home, 2 bedrooms, 1,700 square feet. But my father occasionally had his indulgences, and a Beverly Hills business manager was one of them. And here my father came, document in hand, walking down the stairs from the accountant's office as one would exit a structure engulfed in flames. Not just the way my father walked, it was the way he ran everywhere, to the mailbox, to a subway in Manhattan, getting to the podium to accept his Academy Award. This Allegro philosophy was not just confined to his gait, it also applied to meals. I paid the check, finish up, and meet me in the car. And vacations. There's the Grand Canyon, grab a shot, and we'll try to make the Painter Desert by nightfall. But on this particular day, I was quite grateful for his alacrity, because as he jumped into the car and pulled away from the curb, he handed me the document that I needed to change my life. The document essential to all matters DMV in 1965 as it is today, my birth certificate. As we wound our way back to the valley over Coldwater Canyon, I began to really think through the nuts and bolts of the plan my best friend Dave Goodman and I had hatched. Code name Permit Me. A full driver's license at the age of 16 was certainly something to aspire to. You could take your friends to the beach or to Disneyland. You could take a girl out on a date without your parents or your bus pass. And the learner's permit was not quite the same, as it had this one serious restriction. You had to have a fully licensed adult in the car with you during those endless 6 months. It also had this one wonderful and largely unknown loophole. You could use your learner's permit alone and unsupervised if you're learning to drive a motorcycle. And Dave and I loved our motorcycles. To be clear, we did not own motorcycles. We intended to rent them by the hour. There was a rental lot at Sepulveda and Oxnard that would rent you a 90cc Japanese motorcycle if you could produce a scrap of paper known as a learner's permit, a document generated on an actual typewriter, and absent a photo of said applicant, a California grizzly, a prospector panning for gold, or anyone or anything that would keep us from creating the document on our own. I don't know why they thought the Valley teens would return the bikes in the absence of photo ID and a credit card, but we always did. For kids my age, those noisy contraptions somehow held the promise of speed, freedom, perhaps even romance. I better put my reading glasses on. It's a little late for that. But much, much better. You'd think if I'd written this book, I'd know it by now. For guys my age, those noisy contraptions somehow held the promise of speed, freedom, perhaps even romance. We had seen Steve McQueen jump that fence in his triumph in The Great Escape. Marlon Brando rode his triumph into town in our collective consciousness in The Wild One. But these were golden screen moments from the past, and Dave and I tried to remain au courant
as we were both regular customers at the Fox Theater on Van Nuys Boulevard. Hardly art house cinema, but they often ran films from avant-garde filmmakers like Roger Corman. We went multiple times to see Hell's Angels on Wheels, not so much for the movie, but for the young actor who was in it. An actor who, like Marlon, had something unique and dangerous and wonderful going on. Like Marlon, he would go on to win multiple Academy Awards and be regarded as one of the finest actors of my lifetime. But for now, I was headed back to the valley where I belonged. It was then that I remembered the envelope that my dad had given me, the envelope that contained my birth certificate. What did an ancient document from 1949 look like? Was it written on parchment with a quill? Did it come with one of those cute little baby footprints that make being switched at birth less likely? Before I could settle those very worthy questions, a quick inspection of said document caused a new question to move to the top of my queue, and it was a doozy. Dad? Why is there no mother's name on my birth certificate? My dad was not much for touchy-feely exchanges. At least he didn't respond by going on the offensive with some version of none of your damn business, which was his default setting in the past for such matters. In the minus column, he didn't need to feel the need to pull over or immediately respond. He just kept driving, occasionally looking in the mirror. My immediate thought was, how could he think this wouldn't come up once I looked at the document? Had he simply forgotten that my mother's name was not on it? I knew who my mother was, Amanda Bagley, née Huff. My father and Amanda had 3 children together before she died of cancer in 1957. My brother Tom, my sister Aileen, and me, the youngest. Amanda wasn't your mother. As shocking as that was, I attempted to pick up the pace, making it less like NASA communicating with Voyager 1 as it heads into deep space, and more like an actual conversation. Who is my mother? Long pause. Finally, Sandy's your mother. Now it was my turn to slow down. There would be no fiber optic speeds coming from my side of the conversation now either, just dial-up, 150 baud. In that moment, it all made sense. Sandy. I love Sandy, a little eccentric but fun. When I was much younger, we lived in Merrick out on Long Island, and I'd see her on Christmas or Easter in the city. There was something about her. My sister once hopped the Long Island Railroad, got to Grand Central Station, and started asking commuters where Sandy was. We saw her so much in that particular hub, we thought that she lived there. If it ever occurred to my sister and me to ask, now, who is Sandy again? We never did. We were taught not to ask such questions back then. Years later, I would learn that Sandy was a page at NBC that my father had taken up with, though he was quite actively married to another woman, Amanda. To this day, I had no idea how much Sandy knew about Amanda or vice versa. But for now, my dad and I are stuck in the car together with this little bombshell. We rode in silence for the rest of the way to the DMV. Had I achieved even a small dose of acceptance or gratitude, at this point in my life, I would have seen this moment for what it was, a tremendous gift. 10 minutes ago, I had a mother who was dead. Now I had the live variety. All in all, a good day. But acceptance and gratitude were seen as character defects among my family and peers, so I was not remotely ready for anything like that. I would soon learn that nearly everyone but me knew this deep, dark secret. My sister and I both felt a deep sense of betrayal as a result of it. I was dumbfounded by my father's ability to pull off such a massive bit of deception, probably because I was bad at that kind of thing. So I was bad at lying. That wasn't going to stop me from doing it. If I only had some tools, some matter in a solid, liquid, or gaseous state that could give me the courage and the heightened awareness to be better at lying or other stressful situations. Didn't take me long to find it. It was at first stolen pills, then stolen liquor. It was occasionally even the nitrous oxide pilfered from a can of Ready Whip in the dairy aisle. That covers it, right? The 3 states of matter, solid, liquid, gas. Maybe I was going to pass that chemistry test after all. So I developed a warped sense of reality over the next 2 decades, a warp fermented by a nearly daily regimen of drugs and alcohol from 1967 to 1979. Now, I like to think I'd become a better liar at the time that's transpired since the end of that tumultuous 70s, but you be the judge. I'm going to list a bunch of true facts that I could never have thought of, conceived of in 1965, but I swear to you in my life, they are 100% verifiably true. Okay, one of them is a lie. See if you can spot it. I would have a career that spanned 7 decades and include hundreds of TV shows and movies. I would discover that my brother, Tom Bagley, was my cousin, not my brother. I would get to meet all four Beatles, even get to be friends with them. I would smoke a joint with Charles Manson at the Spahn Ranch in Chatsworth. I would be stabbed, beaten, and hospitalized waiting for a bus in Los Angeles. I would buy my first electric car in 1970. I would have a much improved electric car in 1993, one I sometimes charged at O.J. Simpson's house. I would carry my dear friend Cesar Chavez through the streets of Delano. I would serve several terms as governor in California for a total of 15 years. I would regularly spend time with Groucho Marx in his home and occasionally enjoy a sleepover. I would play Trivial Pursuit with the Clintons and show them the first electric car. I would get to know and work with Kirk Douglas, Meryl Streep, Peter Falk, Alan Arkin, Michael Caine, Billy Wilder, Richard Pryor, Dave Mamet, Jeff Goldblum, Eric Idle, Denzel Washington, Buck Henry, Don Henley, Jane Fonda, Jeannie Davis, Dabney Coleman, Lily Tomlin, Leonardo DiCaprio, Vince Gilligan, John Cleese, Danny Glover, Harvey Keitel, William Hurt, Larry Kasdan, Larry David, Angelica Houston, Pam Grier, Penny Marshall, Alfred Woodard, Taylor Swift, Jeff Bridges, Yaphet Kotto, Rob Reiner, and Christopher Guest. Quite a list, huh? And most incredibly, at the very moment, the very second that my dad told me the shocking news about my mother, we passed a driveway that led to two separate homes in the vicinity of Coldwater and Mulholland. A driveway that for over 40 years was shared by Marlon Brando and that Roger Corman star in the motorcycle, Jack Nicholson. There would be many trips up and down the driveway over the years. You see, I worked at Art's Deli on Ventura Boulevard and would deliver sandwiches to those talented gentlemen. Let me tell you, they were big tippers. Okay, you probably figured out which one was a lie. Not the governor one. I said I served as governor in California, not of California. You'll soon learn governor of what. It was the one about Art's Deli. That was total BS. I never brought Marlon or Jack sandwiches, but I probably should have. That's the kind of thing that you do for friends. That's a little taste of a book I wrote called Thank You to the Temple of Tranquility, and step on it. And they were kind enough to have it here at the beautiful Barnes & Noble today. Now, since I am nearly 75, I hope you'll permit me to look at my notes here again. I said I'd read a chapter of the book, and I did. Shameless self-promotion, trying to sell the book. But who can blame me? Drugs and alcohol, I talked a bit about that. Oh, the most important thing I want to talk about is my plan for life, that is very different and not near as good as the master plan that somehow has been deemed what's going to befall me. A perfect example is a show that some of you might remember. Anybody remember a show called St. Elsewhere? Hospital show in the 80s? Okay, I tried out for St. Elsewhere. I didn't even know what that meant. What does St. Elsewhere mean? It was a hospital, Catholic hospital in Boston, fictional hospital, but it was this great script, and I got a hold of it. I was just about to sell my home, by the way, because at that point I was 15 years working in TV and films, and I wasn't getting the kind of parts I wanted. So I told my wife at the time, Ingrid, I said, we got to sell the house. Let's list it, because this is crazy. If you're working in, I don't care what you're working in, law, medicine, and sports, and after a decade and a half you're not getting somewhere, it's time to shake it up. Let's move to Atlanta, I said. What are you talking about? What are you going to do in Atlanta? I said, I used to play nightclubs there and stuff, and I did a few films there. So I said, I know a lot of rock musicians that come through, other musicians that come through, there are actors that come through. I'll try to be a local weatherman and have a local talk show in Atlanta. I'll be a big fish in a small pond. We're moving. We're going to list the house. I said, come on, get on board here. Ring, the phone rang. My agent said, you got an interview for a show called St. Elsewhere. What? Go over and pick up the script, learn the lines, and you go in tomorrow. Okay. I learned the lines, and I went in and auditioned. And I tell you as I stand here, and it's the absolute truth, I read very, very well. It was a very good reading. I knew I did good. Got a call back from the agent quickly. You didn't get the part. I didn't get the part. I read for this part of Dr. Peter White. It was a regular character on the show, and I thought I was perfect for it. Who'd they give it to? They gave it to Terrence Knox. I couldn't even think of his name. A wonderful guy, worked on the show. Terrence Knox. I thought, wow. Normally I would lose the part to like my friend Jeff Goldblum or to Charles Grodin or somebody like that. Martin Short, I've lost a few parts to. John Cleese, I've lost a few parts to. You go, okay, I was up for a part in the same category as John Cleese or Martin Short. This is pretty damn good. That's not so bad. I'll do that as much as you want. I'm on a list, the same list as John Cleese or these other wonderful actors, Martin Short. But I didn't get it out. Who is he? he calls back a little bit later. He says, you know what, they want you to come and read for a much, much, much smaller part. It's not a regular at all. It's Dr. Peter Ehrlich. How many lines are there? Go pick up the sides. It's, I think, 2, maybe 3 lines. Oh, boy. Okay. I'd like to be in the show. I'll do craft service or whatever if they'll have me. I just want to be around this show because it's good. So I'll go in and read. I read for the part. Dr. Peter White was killed off in the 2nd year, shot in the groin because he was a hospital rapist in the story, and then shot in the stomach. 2 years he was gone. I was in every episode. So you tell me, how lucky am I? Been that way my whole life. What I wanted was over here. What fate has brought me is somewhere else, and it's always been just glorious, just glorious. And to live to be 74 years of age and to have 3 wonderful grandchildren, 3 wonderful kids, all doing well, working and happy, and to have my health in spite of many challenges. You know, I lived next door to a dry cleaner as a young boy with that perchloroethylene blowing in my face every day. We didn't know, nobody was being malicious. They weren't breaking the laws back then. There was no Cleaner Act back then. But I worked over a trichloroethylene tank before there was an OSHA or anything like that. When you worked over trike back in those days, you just worked over a tank of trichloroethylene degreasing parts, let's say. That's what I was doing. And when you started to spin, you couldn't stand up, go outside and take a break for 5 minutes. And so I was like huffing, but, you know, for a paycheck. And so I did that. I drank ant poison when I was crawling on the ground when I was about a year old. We had DDT in the garage that people just sprayed willy-nilly. So toxic elements can stay there and be persistent, but I've had an incredible, wonderful life, and I've gotten well over all that because of constant diet, exercise, and having a good frame of mind, always seeing the positive in things, which I got from my dad. And that they think that Parkinson's comes from toxic exposure and head injuries, and I certainly had both. I used to be so high driving a car, so I ran into parked cars sometimes moving cars, and thank God I didn't kill anybody. I couldn't have lived with that. But it's amazing how I got off and didn't get put in jail. I'll tell you one quick story. Do we have time for me to tell a little bit more? You tell me. Oh, we got to have Q&A. I'll tell a quick story. It's Christmas Eve, and I'm going to a place called Dan Tana's for Christmas because I don't want to sit at home and drink. So I go to a great place called Dan Tana's, an Italian restaurant. It's a real happening space right next door to the Troubadour, where you would go to see Joni Mitchell or James Taylor or Jackson Browne or my friends, the Eagles, Don Henley and Glenn Frey, those guys. Right next door, just 2 doors away actually, was Dan Tana's. So I went there for Christmas because they knew me. But it wasn't very Christmassy. Just had a couple of Christmas lights hung on a Chianti bottle from the ceiling or something. So we went over to the Rainbow Bar and Grill for Christmas, my friend Neil and I. And sure enough, it was very Christmassy there. And I got there, and the guy started to pour a vodka tonic. I had already drank a full quart of vodka. I had 15 double vodka tonics. That's about a quart. So now I go over there. I said, guys, no way am I going to drink any more vodka. I've got to drive us home. On 15 vodka tonics, I'm saying this. And so, you know, I'm going to switch to Chardonnay. That's my way of fixing things. I literally said that. I said, okay. But I'm feeling a little, he says, oh, by the way, Merry Christmas. He holds out his little tin. He's got a little tin. He's got some Altoids or something. There's some mints there. I said, no, do I have bad breath? It was Quaaludes. I said, buddy, I just drank a quart of vodka. And now I've had a bottle of Chardonnay right here with you. There's no way I'm going to take a Quaalude. You know what? Give me half. So I took a half Quaalude. Another 10, 15 minutes, feeling pretty toasty. Give me another half. Another 10 minutes, give me another half. Finally, then it was last call, the lights come up. So I got my friend Neil with me, and I said to Neil, Neil, I don't think I can make it back the valley. Can I crash in your couch, you know, on the way there in the Hollywood Hills? And more importantly, can you drive? Because I'm not sure I can drive. And Neil said this to me, and this is 1975, this is Christmas 1975. I still remember to this day what Neil said. He went, So we kind of got out to the car, and though he was still awake, he was a little out of it too. And I'm driving the car, and I look over and say, you know, man, you've always been there for me. You're such a good friend, Neil. I don't know if it's cool to say this, but I love you, man. I just love you. It's Christmas, and I love you. And he looked at me with a weird look, and I thought, God, I've really offended him this time to say that I love him. I guess I never said that. He thinks I'm thinking of something else in our relationship. The reason he was getting freaked out was not because of what I was saying, but what was about to happen. He was looking where I should have been looking, out the front windshield. Metal and glass everywhere, instantly. I hit 2 cars, just trashed these 2 cars, destroyed one almost totally, raked along the side of the other, couldn't open the doors on the right-hand side of the vehicle. But there's a 3rd car that I did not hit that was the most important. That had 2 sheriff's department guys in it. Right, just a few yards, a yard away from this accident with 2 guys sitting there in a sheriff's department car. And so I get out of the car, and I'm 26 years old and on a lot of adrenaline, so I'm talking something like I'm talking today. I was talking without a slur or anything, and my heart is pounding. Again, I've had a quart of vodka, a bottle of Chardonnay, and a Quaalude and a half, but a new chemical has taken over. I'm so young, and it's so insanely scary. My heart is pounding. I'm on so much adrenaline. I'm somewhat coherent. I say to the guys I've hit, guys, I'm going to talk to you in a second. I'm going to take care of all of this, but please let me talk to these officers. Guys, listen, do me one favor, one only. I ask you, it's Christmas Eve. Cuff me and take me in. Have you been drinking, Mr. Bagley? Yeah, I've had a couple. It's Christmas Eve, guys. I had a couple. Right up any way you want. I'm on drugs and alcohol. I've been pumping the brakes since back at Doheny. These brakes are defective. I've had them in 4 times. If you arrest me and take me in, it will only help my case. I'm not kidding around, guys. Sorry to do this to you guys on Christmas. What a mess. Not only did they not arrest me and take me in, they got under the car. They were looking for the leak in the brake line. There's no leak in the brake line. I hadn't touched the brakes. That's the problem with the brake system. I hadn't touched them. I just ran into these cars. And then, not only did they get into the car to look for it, they let me get in my car and drive home. They don't do that anymore, by the way. And then I heard the guy that the car I had destroyed. I could see he was at a payphone, and I could hear he was dialing for a taxi. I went and I hung up the phone and said, "Sir, I will not have you pay for a taxi. I'm the one that caused this problem. I'll drive you home." And he has crutches because he was just up at Big Bear or something skiing, so he has crutches already. He hasn't been to the hospital for what I just did. I didn't kill him, injure him more, thank God. And so I help him into my car with the crutches. I talk him into getting in my car somehow, but I start to drive us back home down Sunset, and I know I've just been in an accident, but I can't discern what this sound is. I hear this bang, this like metallic bang, 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 bang. Guys, did anybody know what that sound is? And the guy with the crutches says, "Yeah, you're knocking the mirrors off the parked cars on Sunset. You're too close." I'm just, so I correct a little bit to the left. He says, "You know what, let me out." No, it's fine. That's the kind of insanity that we do. We're in that addiction. Toxic thoughts, toxic chemicals in the air and water. We don't need any of that. As we age, we need to get away from that. And let me give you some good news about the environment. There's so much what I'll categorize as bad news, and it's real stuff we've got to deal with, climate change and what have you, but let's not talk about that. Let's remember our successes. In LA, from that 1970 start with the first Earth Day, we have 4 times the cars in LA from 1970, millions more people, but a fraction of the smog. Most people don't know that. They think, oh, the air's been bad and it's gotten worse over the years. It hasn't gotten worse because of everything we did. Cleaner power plants, cleaner vehicles, cleaner everything. And we've proven that we can do it. Big ticket items like that. The water got cleaner. The Cuyahoga River caught fire in 1969. That's why I got involved in 1970 with the first Earth Day. We had a river outside Cleveland catch fire because there's so much toxic chemical on the river. That doesn't happen anymore. We've cleaned up the Hudson River and the Cuyahoga River and many others. We can do this, gang. We can have a non-toxic environment for ourselves, the many plant and animal species that share this earth with. There's a web of life, and we need to protect it all for ourselves. Thank you so much for having me here today. And now the most important part of the thing is not me with my chin music. We got some microphones set up. Please, we've got questions. We have time for a few questions, I believe.
We're going to have a panel, and then we're going to have questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll get off the damn stage. Oh, I'm going to go sit down. Bless you. Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you all.